Hello everyone, AlzaboHD here with a brand new EU4 guide for you here today. In today's video, we will cover how to play as Chavchuveny and the other Siberian tribes of far northeastern Eurasia, among the most isolated and frigid Arctic nations in the entire game. And on the topic of isolated Siberians, I've dedicated this video to the one Chavchuveny person who still lives on in 2020. These tribes of whale fishers are among my favorite tribes to play in EU4, and in the following guide we will explore how to expand, conquer, and dominate as these non-feudal, unreformed, 3-development Siberian Eskimids. And if their situation makes you think of Hell Frozen Over, you're in for a surprise. Playing as these Siberians is not as hard as you might think, and I've rated this guide average in terms of difficulty level. You won't have to restart hundreds of times due to situational RNG rolls, all tribes are more or less in the same position, and you get easy access to some of the best trade goods in the game, like Siberian gold. On the flip side, however, you live on a literal ice glacier, you start without feudalism, and you'll have to reform your Siberian Tribal Council government. It's time to get started and get you straight onto your bearings. There are 4 Siberian tribes to select from, comprising Chavchuveny, Khodynt, Chukchi, and the Kamchadals. Each have only 3 development, possess the Siberian national idea set, and have the unreformed native council government form. This permits them to migrate every 5 years, at the cost of them not having access to feudalism or a reformed government like monarchy, horde, or republic. To add further spice, each start the game with an interregnum, bestowing them a randomized RNG leader in the first month of the game. There is no functional difference between the tribes, outside of their distance to civilization, with Chavchuveny being the closest to Manchuria and thus the quote-unquote easiest to play. For the purposes of this guide, we will select Chavchuveny, although the strategies in this video are available to all 4 of these OPMs, so feel free to choose the flag and map color you like the best. With that being said, once you're in, I'd strongly suggest restarting your save until you get a decent leader, as your nation's interregnum will end immediately and you will be left with a leader with randomized stats. If you're able to get a ruler with at least 3 skill in each category, that will suffice, although a higher skill spread can greatly help in developing your provinces and spawning institutions in later chapters of this guide. When satisfied with your Chav chieftain, it's time to move on and explain the unique migration mechanic that's available to Siberian tribes. With your nation and tribal leader in place, it's time to move to warmer weather. Go ahead and select Migration, a mechanic you'll see at the top of your screen. Next, go ahead and choose a province to your southwest, with the goal of eventually arriving on the border of Jourdan and Jourdan. You can migrate every 5 years, which will grant your nation 50 monarch power in every category, so be sure to do this as often and as quickly as possible. While waiting on your migration timer, you should go ahead and also fabricate claims on any neighboring or C-zone adjacent tribe, in our example, the Kamchadals. Build up your army to your force limit of 6, lay claim to the province, and declare war. This should prove very easy, with the enemy army likely being stack-wiped, and once their capital is conquered, vassalize them in the peace deal. Afterwards, be sure to move your Eskimo brothers back to your capital, improve relations with your new subject state, and continue your migration southwestwards to the province of Chukchi that lies on the border of the Manchurian states of Jourdan and Jourdan. While you're on the march to the border of Asian civilization, you should begin fabricating claims on Nivik as soon as you border their sea lane. At the same time, you should also improve relations with Nivik, Solon, and Jourdan's rivals, with the aim of securing an alliance with Udeji and/or Donghai. Set course for speed 5 and continue migrating when possible, ensuring that you save and bank your admin and diplomatic monarch power along the way. Despite the high institutional cost, you should be investing your military mana into military technology to stay ahead of the curve. At the same time though, it's important to keep your other mana in reserve for developing institutions later on in the guide. In about a decade or 2, you'll reach the province of Gengar, where we will settle our people and found our first capital. If you're lucky, or if your game mysteriously crashes, you can secure a useful trade good for this province, but again, this is pure RNG. In the meantime, I highly recommend fabricating claims on Jourdan and Solon, now that they share your land border. Generally speaking, this region of the world is volatile and explodes on its own, but if you're able to grab an alliance or 2 earlier, bide your time and wait for an opportunity. Once the situation becomes favorable, promise your ally or allies territory if they're available and declare a war of conquest on Jourdan or Nivik for your claims. If you're like me, you might even get both of them in one war. In a multi-front war, the trick is to siege the co-belligerent's capital as fast as possible, in order to take them out early, eliminate them, and fully annex them. With the primary war target now isolated, you should fully occupy them and annex as much as you can, but be sure to break your promise and actually not give your ally any territory. The land you will now annex is quite worthless, with low development and the wrong culture, but it brings us ever closer to the border of the feudalism institution, which we will now cover. Depending on how you handled the previous war with either Jourdan or Nivik, you should be bordering nations that are about to or have already adopted the feudalism institution. On top of this, any temporary ally you may have had in the last war will probably abandon you, since you are a filthy liar and never gave them territory. This can be used to our advantage, however, as these former friends will soon adopt feudalism and make themselves nice targets. Before we spear them down like the whales they are, we need to reassess our diplomatic situation. I recommend improving relations with Korea and other powerful middlemen that do not border you, and allying them before your truce timers are up with your former allies and before you declare war on any other neighbor. Allying Korea also has the benefit of them sharing their institution spread with you, since they already have feudalism at the start of the game. With Kimchi on lockdown, go ahead and fabricate claims on your southern neighbors if you haven't already done so, and declare war with them when the opportunity is ripe for the taking. These wars of conquest will go much easier than in our last step if you play your cards right, and you should soon be able to adopt feudalism from these conquered cores and allied institution spread. Immediately after embracing feudalism, you should spend all of your monarch power that you've saved thus far and tech up, which should shoot you up to tech 4 or 5 in all of your categories. If any tribes are weak, isolated, and not yet a tributary of Ming, it's also a good idea to Anschluss and take what you can. Now that you have at least admin tech level 4 and can select an idea group, it's time to move on to the next step of our guide. You might be tempted at this point to take an early military or administrative idea group to make up for the shortcomings of your Eskimo nation's pathetic army and abysmal economy. Don't do this. Instead, you should choose exploration as your first idea because it's really good for your situation, and I'll explain why. First of all, it allows you to colonize Siberian provinces, which gives you access to early game gold and will bankroll your economy and military. Secondly, it will also allow you to obtain colonialism as a free institution, which means you'll save 2,000 monarch power across all categories, since you'll not need to force develop the institution later on. Lastly, it will get us to Russia and Europe faster. And believe me, you really want to get to Europe as fast as possible, so that you can convert your religion and move your capital out of this frozen wasteland. After you select exploration, invest in the first 2 ideas with 800 diplomatic monarch power, so that you can unlock your first colonist. Although relatively expensive at first, put this colonist to work immediately by colonizing the furthest west province available to you in Siberia. Once this colony reaches 400 population, a trade good will be assigned to it, and if you really want to min-max your campaign, I recommend crashing your game intentionally and save scumming until gold is produced in this province. Regardless as to whether or not you're a dirty cheater, you should begin saving up your monarch power in all categories, so that you can forcibly spawn the Renaissance institution. While waiting for this monarch power, you should continue conquering and consolidating Manchurian tribes. Once you've let your mana build up to approximately 2,000 across all categories, you should go ahead and pick a province that has the most valuable trade good available, preferably gold, and dump all of your monarch power into it to spawn the Renaissance institution. And on the topic of institutions, it should fast be approaching 1500, so we need to prepare for colonialism so that we can get it for free. Invest another 400 diplomatic monarch power into your third exploration idea, which will grant you extra colonial range. This will allow you the coring distance to integrate your vassal Kamchadals, which you should do so as soon as possible. Once this territory is diplomatically annexed, hire an explorer and send them on a mission to explore the Pacific Northeast. If you still lack the colonial range needed for this, you can always hire an advisor, but you probably won't need one. With your explorers heading to Alaska, it's time to shift our attention to the western frontier. Up until this point, the Chavs of Chavchuveny have yet to reach their full potential. Reaching Europe via colonialization will take eternity, and if we don't get there fast, then Russia will block us off with their own colonists. It truly is a rush against time, and time is on the side of the Russians. The solution is simple. We need to take western lands from Mongolia and the Oirat horde as fast as humanly possible. You should begin by fabricating claims on the Mongolian provinces that border you. Since Mongolia is a subject of Oirat, they will enter any future war as co-belligerents, which is exactly what we need. Fortunately for us, the Ming dynasty are not fond of the Muslim hordes to their northwest, and a key to our next strategy is to wait until they attack Oirat before you make a move. It's time to play the role of a crouching tiger while we wait for the hidden dragon. When Ming attacks Oirat with the enforced tributary CB, it's time to make your move. Declare war for your Mongolian claims, move in your army, and avoid the enemy as much as possible. If you're lucky, Ming will destroy their armies, permitting you to siege down their capital and fully occupy the rest of their provinces. If you're unlucky, like I was in this campaign, Ming will peace out with the Oirat and Mongolians very quickly, leaving you to deal with their huge and overwhelming numerical superiority. Don't be afraid to fall into debt and spam mercenaries to attain parity with their forces. As long as you can rush their capital and keep your troops united, you can achieve victory. So be sure to distract the enemy with small bands of mercenary guerrilla fighters that you can use to occupy provinces. After a few months of having their capital occupied, you can sue for peace, and in this treaty be absolutely sure to take all of their northern provinces, forming a sort of snake across North Asia. Even if you haven't explored all of their provinces, you're still able to select them in the peace deal, so annex as far west as humanly possible. It's almost all 3 development land anyway, so you'll be able to take everything that you need. With border war approaching critical levels and your western frontier at the edge of the Siberian tribe, it's time to shift our focus back to the east. By now, it should be in the late 1400s, or potentially even the early 1500s. If you were able to send out an explorer to the Pacific Northeast and discover both the coast and sea tiles of Alaska, you're in a fantastic position. If you were able to achieve this prerequisite, once the year 1500 arrives, you'll be able to spawn the Colonialism institution for free, though this mechanic is RNG dependent and might go to other colonial powers in Europe. You could always make a local save file of your Iron Man game and save scum until you founded the institution yourself, but for the purposes of this guide, let's just say that the example campaign was entirely legitimate. Founding the institution within your borders will give you a massive advantage, as Europe and the rest of the world will quickly fall behind in terms of technological parity. The advent of colonialism also gives you government reform progress and monarch power bonuses. But colonialism isn't just for the Americas. If the Siberian nation to the west still exists, our aim now is to fabricate claims on them and conquer them for their provinces. On the west, they border the region of the Ural Mountains, which, once cored, allow us to colonize the 2 territories of Tura and Palim that will keep Muscovy contained entirely within Europe. Once the Russians are quarantined in Europe, you can use your colonists to found new colonies in the Americas or to fill out Siberia for more gold and fur-producing provinces. To truly embrace the power of Chavchuveny, though, let's take a moment to talk about Manifest Destiny. The lands to your west contain unparalleled development and wealth, and also contain a religion that is far superior to our own. Accordingly, it is of the utmost importance that you fabricate claims on Muscovy and Perm and secure alliances and subjects in the region. The aim here is simple. We will mobilize our troops to the borders of Europe and wait for the Russians to involve themselves in a war. Once they are sufficiently distracted, it's time to invade and spear our way into the heart of Third Rome. The logistics of this war largely mirror those of the Oirat invasion, with a notable twist. Muscovy will possess a force limit and manpower pool roughly 2 to 4 times that of our own, so we'll have to be creative and fight asymmetrically. Further compounding the difficulty of this war is that Muscovy's provinces pose a substantial threat to attrition to our troops, given the severe winters endemic to the region. To solve these problems, I recommend that you keep your men parked on or near the war goal that you've declared war for, as the war score will slowly rise and will save your manpower pool from certain exhaustion. While your main force holds down the war goal, use mercenary spam to carpet siege Muscovy's eastern provinces, which will net you further war score, distract Muscovite troops, and skyrocket their war exhaustion. With any luck, their other wars are distracting them enough at this point, but if not, don't be afraid to retreat once their death stacks arrive, as they greatly outnumber your forces and will crush you if they can consolidate their full army. If you can isolate their units and stack wipe smaller regiments, you should take the opportunity, and if possible, you should also take any nearby forts with mercenaries and artillery if the chance presents itself. The Russian AI has a tendency to send out substantially sized forces across Siberia to siege down our capital, and if this happens, you can seize upon the opportunity and truck directly into Moscow. Once you have enough war score, you should demand their provinces in Perm and sign a peace. There will be plenty of time for us to push further into Russia later on, and we fulfilled our short-term goal for the time being. With Russian territory now in our grasp, it's time to abuse game mechanics so that we can adopt Orthodox Christianity as our main religion. Now, I've made videos on why this religion is the strongest in the game, but in brief, it will allow us to enforce personal unions on Christian nations, gives us ridiculously powerful countrywide bonuses, and unlocks the mechanic of Orthodox icons. You could stay Tingri for role-playing purposes, but I'd strongly recommend against it. To adopt Christianity and truly embrace Jesus, we need to generate massive unrest in our Christian provinces, as is historic tradition. To accomplish this, go and send out missionaries to convert their provinces, while ensuring that your missionary maintenance is set to 0%, and decrease the regional autonomy of these provinces once they're fully cored. If done correctly, the rebels in these provinces will switch from separatists to Orthodox religious zealots, and all we have to do is wait for their status to reach 100% for an open rebellion. To ensure their success, make sure your army is far away, your subjects are set to passive, and that you're not actively giving any foreign nations access to your lands. With these precautions in place, the Christian rebels will occupy province after province, converting each of their conquests to orthodoxy and bringing your people that much closer to eternal salvation. Keep in mind that zealots can't cross the territory of vassals, so be sure to integrate any subjects that might stand between them and your capital. And, speaking of capitals, they have to occupy yours for you to be able to give in to their demands, so be sure to give them safe passage as they march their way towards the heartland of your empire. This entire process is very slow, and will paralyze your nation's economy, potentially preventing you from declaring wars for about a half-decade, but it's entirely worth it. You can use this time for other things, like improving relations with your neighbors, diplomatically dismantling coalitions, fabricating claims on future territory, or even colonizing land in Siberia or America. Once the rebels occupy your capital, you'll have several months before you are forced to embrace orthodoxy. I'd recommend allowing the zealots to take more land so that you won't have to convert more of it later on. Sooner or later, you'll be forcibly converted, and at this point I'd recommend taking religious as your second or third idea group if you haven't done so already. Congratulations! You now have access to the best religion in the game, and are present in Asia, Europe, and potentially the Americas. As an undisputed world power, it's time to move on to the final section of our guide. While our nation's rise to power has been nothing short of incredible, our government form is still absolutely abysmal. If you have the Dharma DLC, you'll eventually have the opportunity to swap and become either a monarchy, republic, theocracy, or horde. Although all of these present their own advantages, except theocracy, which is garbage and should never be picked, I would strongly recommend and advocate that you choose the horde government type once you're able to do so. Being a horde allows you to declare war on everyone without a casus belli, and functionally gives you unlimited monarch power as you can raise annexed provinces to give you mana. You can also swap to a monarchy or republic later on with only a penalty of 10 corruption, making it the best way to quickly conquer your way into Europe, Asia, and the Americas. For national ideas, I'd recommend choosing exploration, offensive or defensive, religious, and influence as your first 4. These sets are balanced and allow you to expand quickly via subjects, colonialization, and the might of your army. For short-term goals, I'd recommend annexing the rest of Russia and moving your capital to Kazan or Muscovy, which will permit you to form trade companies throughout Asia and most of Africa. Moving forward, you can easily subjugate the rest of the continent, and the possibility of a world conquest is plausible if you're able to manage multi-front wars and maximize your absolutism. If you want a funny challenge, you can also fully occupy and conquer the British Isles, allowing you to bring the Chav culture a few centuries earlier than you might expect. No matter what you decide to do with your Arctic Empire, I wish you the best of luck. And if you're out of ideas, I recommend checking out my other nation guides for inspiration for your future Europa endeavors. Before ending the video, I'd like to announce that EU4 and its DLC is still on sale for as low as $1. My channel is partnered with the charity group Humble Bundle, who is currently offering the game the cheapest it's ever been and likely ever will be. If you want to support charity, the channel, and get the game without having to take out loans or debase your currency, I suggest heading to the link below and in the description box of this video. A $1 purchase gives you Steam keys for EU4 and 3 of the best DLCs, and includes pre-bonus packs and event packs. Higher tier purchases offer more DLC, with the highest being only $17 and offering you every single DLC and immersion pack, excluding the Conquest of Paradise DLC. Given that one DLC retails from between $10 to $15 to $20, I highly recommend checking the sale out if you're starting out or looking into getting your friends and family the game. So far, viewers of the channel have raised more than $1,400 to charity, and I would like to thank you all so much for the support. If you've made it this far into the video, please let me know what you think about the guide in the comment section below. If you're interested in other nations or video ideas, this would be the best place to suggest them. I'm currently moving back to my home in France, so uploads might be sporadic for the next week before I'm able to get back on the schedule. I've got a CK2 and EU4 challenge video in the works. For those of you who are eagerly awaiting part 2 of the Horse Only Challenge, I think you'll be quite pleased. Oh, and one more thing. I just made a new video end screen. Let me know what you think.